Hello everybody, I'm your Posh prick, and today I'm talking about brains. Yeah, with Halloween in full swing and the final season set to wrap in November, I figured I should take the opportunity to go over a fallen franchise that just refuses to stay fallen. Adapted from the comic series of the same name by Robert Kirkman, which ran from 2003 to 2019, The Walking Dead got its start around peak TV time, rubbing shoulders with the likes of Game of Thrones, Breaking Bad, and Dexter. Kind of a good metaphor, really. The Walking Dead survived long enough to become a shambling, brain-dead husk of its former self. Nice. The show revolves around a colourful cast of characters in the aftermath of a major walker apocalypse. The series' central protagonist, Deputy Rick Grimes, leads his group across the state of Georgia to find sanctuary from the walkers and other less friendly survivors. Like a lot of shows, things don't stay that simple for long, characters die, locations change, showrunners get chucked off, you know how it goes. But before we get to lobbing off rotting walker heads, it's time to take a look at where this viral outbreak of a show began, and goes without saying, spoilers ahead. Production of The Walking Dead was originally spearheaded by Frank Darabont of Shawshank Redemption and Green Mile fame. Darabont came across the comic book series in 2005 and approached Kirkman to do an adaptation before pitching it first to NBC and then AMC. Darabont developed and executive produced the first season, which received glowing reviews from audiences and critics alike, and also earned AMC its most-watched series premiere of all time. I'd like to go into more detail regarding Darabont's involvement and departure, but then we'd get into spoiler territory for the rest of this video, so I'm just gonna move on. Throughout its 11-season run, The Walking Dead veered steadily away from the comic of its origin. Plenty of recognizable characters appear, but certain plot points and story beats deviate from how they go in the source material. That kind of artistic license is to be expected from any adaptation. Some changes were well received, others not so much. But we'll get into that more in a minute. All in all, despite the wide dips and valleys that the show went down in terms of quality, The Walking Dead remains one of the more ambitious ventures in the zombie genre. Fundamentally, the show's iteration of walkers don't deviate much from your bog-standard zombie, but the fact that Kirkman and the showrunners were able to weave a half-decent post-apocalyptic world out of what I consider one of the least interesting movie monsters is an impressive feat. People forget now, but back in 2010, the zombie craze was all over the place. The Walking Dead came out right as this trend peaked, and it even spearheaded it in a lot of ways. I mean, we had plenty of zombie stories before the 2010s, Shaun of the Dead, 28 Days Later, etc., but nothing stuck in our cultural lexicon quite as hard as The Walking Dead. After this, we got The Last of Us, Warm Bodies, World War Z. Everyone wanted to get on that zombie train after the show made its mark. In many ways, The Walking Dead is a good metric to judge just how much people do or don't care about zombies anymore. The craze came and went, but The Walking Dead is still going in one form or another. That could either highlight the show and the genre's resilience, or the studio's refusal to accept that this is a trend that they can't ride the coattails of anymore. At least until The Last of Us show comes out and blows up my theory, but that's for a later date. All in all, I'd say that the strengths of the early Walking Dead seasons were a matter of character and pacing. Season 1 is still the high point which the show was never able to recapture. It had everything: complex characters, interesting themes, strong world building, not to mention that the pacing was leaps and bounds ahead of what the later show managed. But in the later show's defense, even the worst seasons had some golden moments here and there. As dry as season 2 was, that reveal of Sophia in the barn, chills. Seasons 5 through 7 slowed things down a ton, but we got Negan and the Saviors, goddammit, and they were some of the best villains in any zombie story. In short, even at its worst, The Walking Dead always found ways of clawing back the audience's attention. So The first red flags actually popped up way back in 2011 after Darabont's departure, and I say departure in kind of a vague-ish way because people weren't really sure what was going on at the time. AMC announced the showrunner's departure just a few days after Comic-Con 2011, where Darabont helped to promote the series. Everyone was left in the dark. I mean, this was Darabont's baby. He was the one who pitched the whole thing to AMC. Now all of a sudden he's leaving? What's the deal? The reigning theory at the time was that Darabont couldn't adjust to TV production schedules and left because of the stress, but this was soon debunked as the Hollywood Reporter revealed that AMC had actually fired him. According to reports, problems had plagued the second season, with Darabont and AMC having disputes over budget cuts and other executive decisions over the show's production. Upon his firing, neither Darabont, AMC, nor the entire cast of The Walking Dead discussed the matter, which to me screams red flags. All of this came to a head in 2013 when Darabont and the Creative Artists Agency sued AMC, citing a breach of contract. According to the lawsuit, AMC allegedly underpaid Darabont, using legal loopholes through vertical integration to avoid paying him his agreed share of the profits. To summarize a whole load of legal jargon that I can't be bothered to sift through, AMC went back on contractual agreements to divert production of The Walking Dead to a third party, instead deciding to produce it themselves. This allowed AMC to make it look as if The Walking Dead was running at a loss, thereby avoiding having to pay Darabont his fair amount. To give an example, in 2012, AMC claimed that the show was running at a $49 million deficit, despite the fact that it was one of the most popular series on broadcast television at that time. Things got even thornier when Darabont's lawyers claimed that the man was fired before the second season so that AMC could avoid paying him. Then things got even worse when similar lawsuits were filed by fellow crew members, including Robert Kirkman, Gail Ann Hurd, Charles Egley, Glenn Mazzara, and David Alpert, all of whom claimed that AMC had screwed them out of money through vertical integration, much the same way that they had with Darabont. AMC settled the Darabont lawsuit in 2021, with $200 million paid to Darabont and the Creative Artists Agency, along with any future royalty payments, while the latter suit from other showrunners and producers were dismissed by court order. Regardless of this later decision though, this entire legal situation doesn't paint AMC in the best light. Again, I'm no lawyer, I don't know all the ins and outs, but this all screams like a blatant attempt by a big media company to screw over one of their creatives because they just didn't want to cut into their profits. Darabont came up with the idea for the show, worked with the guy who wrote the comic, pitched it to AMC, worked his arse off on the first and, as far as I'm concerned, best season, and it went on to be one of the most popular shows in TV history. So with numbers like that, naturally it makes total sense to screw over the guy who put together one of your biggest cash cows, am I right? This is a tragically common occurrence in this industry. Darabont got the ball rolling in 2010, but within a year he's booted off of his own project, which in turn was co-opted and taken over by the studio. I mean, who knows what might have happened with Rick and Carl and everyone else had Darabont stayed on and been allowed to direct the show how he liked. As it stands though, following Darabont's departure, the show's quality veered wildly through the seasons. Season 2 on the farm is near universally considered the worst, with the strong pacing and interesting characterization from the first season markedly absent. The show regained some steam with the introduction to Michonne and the Governor, and then kept things going pretty solidly throughout the prison arc. Then things took another dip with the whole Alexandria storyline, then got a little momentum back with Negan and the Saviors, and then leveled out with the Whisperers before going back to Boredom Town with the Commonwealth story arc. Along this flip-floppy period, we saw several writing choices which were not only questionable or just downright contradictory, but actively left audiences confused and angry. Laurie's character was despised early on and only seemed to get worse as things progressed. Carol went from one of the most beloved characters on the show to one of the dumbest during the Whisperer storyline. I'm just gonna whisper this to all of the aspiring writers out there. You don't need to portray grief in a character by making them stupid. But easily the dumbest decision, at least to me, was killing off Carl. Carl, the heart and soul, the optimist, the hopeful one who was meant to succeed Rick as the main character. The kid who lost his damned eye and still came out wishing for the best. Why in the hell would you kill him off? Can't we just have one optimistic character not get punished for the mortal sin of being an optimist? Moments like this make you realize the spotty, inconsistent nature of the show's writing, and also makes the audience aware of the hand of the author. I mean, this decision was Daenerys burning King's Landing levels of stupid for me. It sucked me out of the moment because it was a writing decision which meant nothing and didn't benefit the story or the characters. This brings me to a fundamental problem with any show or franchise that lasts as long as this. Inevitably, it's going to run out of steam. It happened with Supernatural, it happened with The X-Files, and The Walking Dead ran out of steam seasons ago without getting the message. Veering into a slight tangent here, but a common problem I find with zombie stories is repetitiveness. There's only so many directions that you can take this particular category of monster, and even then your options are quite limited. You can make them slow and stupid, or fast and angry, cobble together a colourful cast of characters, sprink in some bleak message about the nature of humanity following an apocalypse/viral outbreak, and boom, you've got 90% of stories that involve zombies out there. It's not like vampires or werewolves where you've got room to do different things and different interpretations. With zombies, what you see is all you get. They aren't intelligent, they travel and attack in hordes, you kill them by aiming for the head, and there's usually no way to cure them. 28 days/weeks later, World War Z, they all kind of share the same basic structure, and if you draw that structure out for too long, your audience is just gonna get bored. This was less true in The Walking Dead's beginnings. Darabont was aware of the pitfalls of this genre and worked to make sure that the story remained fresh. Part of that was done by tightening up the number of episodes in the first season. At the start, all we had were 6 installments, which kept the pacing quick and consistent. Like a lot of American shows, I'd argue that The Walking Dead suffered from stretching itself too thin over too many episodes. Season 1 knew to stay in the pocket. 6 to 10 episodes a season, I would argue, makes way more sense if you want your pacing to remain concise. Obviously that's an oversimplification, but with something like The Walking Dead, I think it applies. Unless you're doing a big fantasy epic with dragons and fictional continents and ancient royal lineages, etc., 6 to 10 episodes is a good time frame to strive for. Any longer and you're just going to end up padding the show down and stretching the story out longer than is ideal. The Walking Dead became a pitch-perfect example of this. Whether because of showrunner indulgence or the studio just calculating that more episodes equals more views and more ratings, having this many episodes in a bleak show about the driest and least interesting type of movie monster out there is just going to make your audience bored. Plot lines get stretched out for too long, characters end up feeling stale and hollow or just feel underdeveloped. There's not enough weight to this particular kind of story to justify giving it this much airtime. Ultimately, the problem with The Walking Dead, aside from the legal battles, poor studio management, and basic pitfalls of its genre, is pure and simple oversaturation. The damn thing has lasted way too long to end with any grace, and even with the main show concluding, they're still trying to make spin-offs to milk it for all it's worth. Several spin-offs have been promised by The Walking Dead showrunners, some of which have paid off, others were left on the cutting room floor. Fear the Walking Dead is one of the more successful ones, such to the point that many viewers think that it actually outshines the original show. That Carol and Daryl spin-off is apparently not happening anymore. The Walking Dead movie is still up in the air. Fundamentally, the problem is now, and has been for a long time, that we just don't care anymore. It doesn't really matter how well or poorly executed that The Walking Dead ends, I'm not going to care either way. We cared when Game of Thrones ended, even though it pissed us all off. We cared when Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul ended. People were talking about those shows months after they wrapped. I doubt there's going to be anybody talking about The Walking Dead when it finally concludes because, like I said, it's just overstayed its welcome. I can't predict what would have happened if Darabont stayed on as the lead showrunner, but I can't imagine that the quality would have gotten worse than what we've seen. Maybe he could have ended it on a better note. Maybe he could have handled some elements from the comics better. Maybe he wouldn't have killed Carl off. Sorry, that's still my biggest pet peeve. All I know is, the way the show went and the way AMC handled it, anything would have been better than what we got. Despite its spirited beginnings, The Walking Dead will forever be remembered as yet another franchise which should have known to go out gracefully and stay dead and buried.